My name is José Salvador Alvarenga, and this is the story of how I survived 438 days adrift in the Pacific Ocean, facing storms, hunger, loneliness, and death itself. Before becoming known for my survival story, I was just a simple man, dedicated to my family and my work. I was born in Garita Palmera, a small fishing village in El Salvador. As far back as I can remember, the sound of the waves and the smell of the sea have always been a part of my life. I learned to fish with my father and other fishermen in our community. Fishing wasn't just a means of livelihood, it was a passion and a family tradition. Seeking better opportunities, I moved to Mexico, where I found work as a fisherman on the coast of Chiapas. My goal was to provide a better life for my daughter, who was still living in El Salvador. I dreamed of saving enough money to bring her to live with me in Mexico. I was a cheerful and optimistic man, always believing that better days were ahead. My routine involved long journeys at sea, facing natural challenges and ensuring our sustenance through fishing. I stood out for my determination and team spirit, always ready to help my colleagues. Life at sea was tough, but I found peace and purpose in the vast blue waters of the Pacific. It was during one of these fishing trips, which started as a normal day, that my life changed forever. What was supposed to be a 2-day expedition turned into an epic fight for survival when an unexpected storm pushed us into an odyssey that would last 438 days adrift in the ocean. It was November 17, 2012, an apparently ordinary day in the small port of Costa Azul, Mexico. My fishing partner, Ezequiel Cordoba, and I were eager to start another fishing journey on our fiberglass boat. The sky was a bright blue, dotted with sparse white clouds moving lazily. The deep blue sea reflected the morning sun, creating a tapestry of shimmering lights on the surface. Our boat was loaded with all the necessary equipment: nets, hooks, bait, provisions for a few days, and enough fuel for a long fishing trip. As we moved away from the coast, the weather began to change quickly. The white clouds gave way to heavy grey masses that clustered and spread across the sky. The sea started to churn, its colors becoming darker and more threatening, as if preparing for a battle. The wind, which initially blew as a light, refreshing breeze, began to gain strength. In no time, it was whistling through the masts and whipping our faces with salty spray. The first big waves emerged, rising like liquid hills before crashing with a deafening roar against the boat's hull. Each impact reverberated through our bodies, making our bones tremble. We ignored the first warning signs, confident in our experience and ability to navigate in adverse conditions. However, the storm formed faster than we expected. Within hours, we were engulfed by a whirlwind of strong winds and gigantic waves. The sky darkened completely, and visibility drastically decreased. The sea, once a deep and welcoming blue, turned into a grey and turbulent battlefield, with waves that seemed like monsters ready to swallow us at any moment. The boat's engine began to fail, coughing and spluttering until it stopped completely. Without the engine, we were at the mercy of the waves. We tried using the GPS to orient ourselves, but it had also been damaged by the salt water and the violence of the storm. Our radio, the only link to the mainland, was useless. Our distress calls were lost in the void of the open sea. The situation became desperate. The storm continued to push us further from the coast, and every attempt to stabilize the boat seemed futile. The waves were enormous, pounding against the boat's hull with relentless force. The deafening noise of the wind and waves created a chaotic and frightening environment. Every moment was a fight for survival. To prevent the boat from capsizing, we decided to discard our valuable fish cargo. It was a necessary sacrifice to try to keep the boat stable. We threw fish after fish into the water, desperately trying to lighten the boat's weight. We also threw away anything that could add extra weight, including ice and gasoline. The storm lasted for days, and each one felt longer than the last. The nights were especially terrifying, with total darkness making it impossible to see the approaching waves. We huddled together to stay warm, our bodies trembling with cold and exhaustion. Every moment was a constant struggle to stay alive. When the storm finally passed, the sea calmed, but we were adrift. Our boat, damaged and without an engine, floated aimlessly. We were without GPS and radio, completely disconnected from the world. Our supplies were scarce, and the hope of being rescued diminished with each passing day. The vastness of the ocean around us highlighted our insignificance and loneliness. The sea, which once seemed like a relentless adversary, now appeared as a vast and inhospitable desert. The calm after the storm brought an almost deafening silence, broken only by the gentle sound of the waves and the wind. The serenity of the ocean starkly contrasted with the chaos and fury we had faced, creating a surreal and disconcerting atmosphere. In the first days after the storm, our main concern was finding drinking water. Without fresh water on board, and with the ocean around us offering only salt water, dehydration was a constant threat. We improvised a rainwater collection system using everything we had at our disposal. We dismantled parts of the boat to create surfaces where the water could accumulate and be drained into improvised containers like buckets, pots, and even plastic bags. Every drop of water was precious. The first rain we managed to collect brought a mix of relief and euphoria. We drank the water slowly, savoring each sip as if it were the nectar of the gods. We felt life returning to our dehydrated bodies, and hope was reborn with every drop we managed to store. Food was also a constant concern. Without proper equipment, we relied solely on our bare hands to catch fish and turtles. Fishing was an arduous and dangerous task. Our bodies were tired and sore, but the need for food was greater than any discomfort. We plunged our arms into the cold water, blindly groping in the hope of feeling the slippery touch of a fish. When we managed to catch one, the sense of triumph was indescribable, but this victory came at the cost of cuts and scratches caused by the sharp scales. Besides fish, we occasionally managed to catch seabirds and turtles, which provided us with meat and blood, essential for our survival. I clearly remember the first time I caught a turtle. The creature fought with surprising strength, its flippers beating frantically against the water. Pulling it into the boat required colossal effort, every muscle in my body burning with tension. When I finally succeeded, I looked at the turtle with a mixture of respect and gratitude. The need to survive forced us to overcome any hesitation, and every piece of meat was meticulously divided, even using the bones to make improvised utensils. Every meal was a feast, a celebration of our resilience and will to live. Hunger was a constant torment. Without proper bait or hooks, fishing became a risky activity. As hunger increased, we resorted to extreme measures. We drank our own urine and turtle blood, a desperate practice to stay hydrated. Isolation and uncertainty weighed on us. Without any means of communication, we didn't know if anyone was looking for us or if our existence had been forgotten. The vastness of the ocean enveloped us in a cloak of loneliness and despair. To maintain hope, we developed a routine. We counted the days by observing the phases of the moon and marked time with scratches on the side of the boat. We talked about our families, our hopes and fears, trying to stay sane amidst the chaos. The solidarity between me and Cordoba was essential. We supported each other, sharing our anguish and brief joys. Every conversation, every gesture of support was a reminder of our humanity. Even in the most inhuman conditions, the relationship of mutual support and complicity helped us face daily challenges. We created a kind of shift system for survival tasks, dividing the responsibilities of collecting water, fishing, and maintaining the boat. I remember one particularly clear night when Cordoba and I stayed awake looking at the stars. We talked about our families, our childhoods, and the dreams we had before this ordeal. He told stories about his mother, how she made the best tamales, and how he missed her embrace. These conversations kept us connected to our humanity and gave us the strength to carry on. But as days turned into weeks and weeks into months, the reality of our situation became increasingly harsh. Survival was a constant battle against despair and exhaustion. The gradual loss of weight and energy made every task more difficult. The physical wear was visible in our thin and weakened bodies, while the mental wear was reflected in prolonged moments of silence and lost looks at the endless horizon. Despite all the adversities, the hope of being rescued never completely disappeared. Every time we spotted a different bird or a change in the behavior of the waves, we clung to the possibility that it meant land was nearby or a navigation route. We developed a kind of sixth sense to notice changes in the environment, always alert to any sign that could indicate the presence of other vessels or land. The survival routine became our new normal. Each day we managed to get through was a new victory against the relentless sea. We kept our minds occupied with daily tasks and small celebrations of our achievements, no matter how small. Every new day was an opportunity to fight for our lives and keep the flame of hope alive amid the lonely vastness of the ocean. As the months passed, Ezequiel Cordoba's health began to visibly deteriorate. Life at sea, with its relentless conditions, was taking its toll. Initially, he still managed to maintain a positive spirit, helping with fishing and collecting water, but gradually, Cordoba's physical and mental strength waned. He developed severe digestive problems, often getting sick after meals. Each day, his body seemed to grow more fragile, and his spirit darker. I could see the glimmer of hope fade from his eyes, replaced by an expression of pain and despair. Cordoba began to refuse food, unable to bear the nausea and pain that followed meals. Malnutrition quickly started to consume his body. His bones became visible under his skin, which was now stretched and pale. He also started refusing water, claiming that drinking was as painful as eating. Each sip was a torture for him. In moments of lucidity, Cordoba spoke about his family, especially about his mother. He asked me that if he didn't survive, I would go to his home and deliver a message to her. His words were filled with regret and sadness. He felt he had failed as a son and wanted his mother to know that he loved her and was sorry for all the times he had disappointed her. However, these conversations became increasingly rare as his condition worsened. Cordoba spent most of his time lying down, motionless, conserving his last reserves of strength. I did my best to keep him hydrated, but he resisted any attempts to help. His skin was hot to the touch, a clear sign of fever, and his eyes, which once shone with determination, were now dull and glazed. In his final days, Cordoba could barely speak. In a faint whisper, he asked me to stay with him until the end. I held his hand and promised I would do everything I could to fulfill his last wishes. He passed away quietly, a shadow of his former self, consumed by hunger and thirst. I held Cordoba's body for several days after his death, unable to accept the reality that I was now completely alone. During that time, I continued to talk to him as if he could still hear. It was a way to maintain my sanity, to not succumb to the complete despair that constantly threatened me. However, the inevitable decomposition of the body made it impossible to maintain this illusion for long. With a heavy heart, I performed a sort of improvised funeral at sea, laying my friend's body to rest in the waters that had tormented us so much. Watching Cordoba's body disappear beneath the waves was one of the hardest moments of my life. Now, alone, my struggle for survival became even more challenging. The following months were a constant test of my sanity. The solitude in the vast ocean was overwhelming. I was surrounded by nothing but water as far as the eye could see. The nights were especially terrifying, with total darkness intensifying the sense of isolation and fear. The silence of the ocean was almost deafening, broken only by the gentle sound of the waves and the wind. It was a heavy silence that seemed to amplify my thoughts and fears. The vastness of the ocean around me emphasized my insignificance and loneliness. Every moment was a fight against despair. I tried to keep my mind occupied, but the recurring thoughts of my family and the possibility of never seeing them again were a constant torture. With each sunrise, I renewed my determination to keep fighting for my life. Finding food remained a constant challenge. Without proper equipment, I relied solely on my bare hands to catch fish and turtles. Each catch was a victory, a reaffirmation of my survival skills. Collecting rainwater was equally crucial. I improvised containers with anything I could find, always alert to climatic changes that could indicate an imminent storm. The days blurred into an exhausting routine of survival. There were moments when despair almost overwhelmed me. Despite the adversities, there were moments of clarity and hope. I forced myself to remember my family, especially my daughter. Thinking of them gave me the strength to carry on, to not give up. Every sunset I witnessed was proof that I had survived another day. Each sunrise gave me a new opportunity to fight for my life. The loneliness also led me to talk to myself, and even to the ocean. I narrated my actions out loud, an attempt to avoid complete mental collapse. The extreme isolation and lack of human interaction were torturous, but these solitary conversations were a way to keep my mind active and focused. During my time adrift, I also became an expert at recognizing the signs of the ocean. I carefully observed the behavior of fish and seabirds, looking for any indication of nearby land or currents that could lead me to areas more frequented by boats. I learned to identify wave patterns and use the stars as a guide, although without precise navigation instruments. This was more an exercise in hope than a reliable technique. The survival routine became my new normal. After more than a year adrift, my determination was finally rewarded. On what seemed like any other day, I spotted a dark patch on the horizon. My heart raced at the possibility that it was land. At first I thought it might just be an illusion, a trick of my desperate mind. But as I got closer, the vision became clearer. It was an island. The sight of solid ground filled my heart with hope and renewed energy. The extreme fatigue I had felt for months was temporarily replaced by a surge of adrenaline. My body, even weakened and famished, seemed to gain new strength at the prospect of salvation. I cut the buoys I had been using as an improvised anchor, and with my last remaining strength, began swimming towards the shore. The crossing was exhausting, with my arms and legs weakened by months of deprivation. Every stroke was a battle against exhaustion and the current. The water seemed to drag on, and the effort made my muscles ache. But the desire to touch solid ground again drove me forward. As I got closer, I could smell the earth and hear the sound of the waves breaking on the beach, increasing my determination. When I finally reached land, my arms and legs were weak, and I could barely stand. The feeling of sand beneath my feet was indescribable, a mix of relief and disbelief. Staggering, I let myself fall to my knees, feeling the texture of solid ground for the first time in over a year. It was as if an immense weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I struggled to my feet and began walking along the beach. Each step was a monumental effort, but the joy and relief of being on solid ground were indescribable. I stumbled forward until I spotted a small house on the beach. With renewed hope, I made my way there and knocked on the door with the little strength I had left. A couple answered, their faces reflecting a mixture of shock and disbelief. Their eyes widened at the sight of my deplorable state. Disheveled hair and beard, sunburnt skin, clothes in tatters. They quickly offered me water and something to eat. Their gestures of kindness and concern deeply moved me. As I tried to explain my situation with broken and weak words, they did not hesitate to take me in and help me. Their acts of compassion were a balm to my weary soul. They quickly alerted the authorities, and my long ordeal finally came to an end. When I was rescued in the Marshall Islands, the disbelief was widespread. It was hard for people to believe that someone could have survived so long at sea, facing extreme hunger, thirst, and loneliness. But there I was, alive to tell my story. I was taken to a hospital, where I received the necessary care to begin my physical and mental recovery. The news of my survival quickly spread, and soon I found myself at the center of media attention. Many doubted the truth of my story, questioning how anyone could have survived for so long in such adverse conditions. However, the doctors who examined me confirmed that my vital signs and physical state were consistent with the account of a man who had spent over a year adrift at sea. After my initial recovery, I was taken back to Mexico, where I was reunited with my family and friends. The reunion was emotional and filled with tears. My daughter, who had grown so much during my absence, could hardly believe that her father was back. Reuniting with my family gave me a new sense of purpose and helped me begin to process the trauma of the past months. We hugged tightly, as if never wanting to let go again. My mother cried and thanked God for my return, while my daughter looked at me with admiration and love in her eyes. The simple fact of being together again was a miracle for which we were all immensely grateful. The experience at sea taught me valuable lessons about resilience, hope, and the strength of the human spirit. Each day I spent adrift was a testament to my determination to live, and the journey back to solid ground profoundly transformed me. My story is not just a chronicle of physical survival, but also a testimony to the human capacity to endure and persevere in the most extreme conditions. Even after the rescue, recovery was long. I had to deal with the psychological effects of the experience, such as recurring nightmares and a constant sense of anxiety. However, with the support of my family and mental health professionals, I began to rebuild my life. My story became a symbol of hope and inspiration for many, showing that even in the most desperate situations, willpower and faith can guide us back to the light. In the months that followed, I gave interviews and shared my story with the world. I was invited to speak at conferences and events where I could detail the odyssey I had lived through. My narrative not only captivated people, but also made them reflect on their own lives and the adversities they faced. Additionally, I became involved in activities that could help others. I participated in awareness campaigns about sea safety and the importance of always being prepared for emergencies. My experience turned me into a passionate advocate for maritime safety, and I wanted to ensure that other fishermen and sailors did not face the same difficulties I did. Life would never be the same after the experience of being adrift for so long. There was a new sense of gratitude in every moment, in every meal, in every day I could spend with my family. The small things that were once taken for granted now had immense value. The simple act of drinking a glass of fresh water or eating a hot meal were blessings I deeply appreciated. My survival journey also strengthened my family bonds. I spent more time with my daughter, witnessing her growth and participating in her life in a way that had not been possible before due to my long fishing trips. I reinforced my commitment to being a good father and to providing her with a safe and happy future. The experience also taught me about human resilience and the ability to adapt. I learned that regardless of the circumstances, there is always a way to survive and thrive. My story is a testament that even in the most extreme situations, determination, hope, and faith can guide us back to the light. Today, when I look back and reflect on my journey, I feel a profound sense of accomplishment. Surviving adrift in the ocean for so long was one of the greatest trials of my life, but it was also an experience that taught me invaluable lessons about life, survival, and the importance of family and community. My story is not just about the struggle for physical survival, but also about emotional and spiritual survival. It is a testament that even in the most desperate situations, the human spirit can prevail and find a way to move forward. I hope that my story continues to inspire and motivate others to never give up, no matter the challenges they face. Thus, my journey, which began as a simple fishing trip, transformed into an odyssey of survival, resilience, and hope. By sharing this story with the world, I hope to leave a legacy of strength and determination that will endure for generations.